Hi, my name is Jazmín Cervantes and I'm going to talk about the science of biology. The first topic of this chapter is what is science? In this topic, we saw that science is an organized way of gathering and analyzing evidence about the natural world. Also, we saw that scientific methodology has the steps of observation, that is the act of noticing and describing events or processes in a careful, orderly way. Inference, that is a logical interpretation based on what scientists already know. Hypothesis, that is a scientist's explanation for a set of observations that can be tested in ways that support or reject it. And you can design control experiments, that is when a hypothesis should be tested by an experiment in which only one variable is changed. And all other variables should be kept unchanged or continued. This type of experiment is called a control experiment. So a control experiment is when all the variables should be kept unchanged or controlled. So there is a control group and experimental group. A control group is a group that not receive the factor being tested, and the experimental group is the one that receives the factor being tested. So the control group is when it's normal, and experimental group is when they add another variable to see what different reactions it has. Scientists make detailed records of experimental observations, gathering information called data. There are two types of data, the quantitative and the qualitative. The quantitative data are numbers obtained by counting or measuring. The qualitative data are descriptive and involve characteristics that cannot usually be counted. And finally, drawing conclusions, where scientists use experimental data as evidence to support, refute, or revise the hypothesis being tested and to draw a valid conclusion, and it can be wrong or right. The second topic of this chapter is science in context. In this topic, we saw the scientific attitudes that the scientist has. The first attitude is curiosity. That is when the scientist is curious about something and makes questions about a specific topic. Skepticism. That is when the scientist is has the idea that it needs to have evidence or provement about something, because if it is not proved, it is wrong, or it can be that result or something like that. Open-minded, that is when the scientist is willing to accept different ideas that may not agree with their hypothesis, but they need to have an open-mindedness. Creativity, that is when the scientist has creativity to make the experiment and all the data. The role of technology. Technology, science, and society are closely linked. Those technologies, in turn, enable scientists in other fields to ask new questions or to gather data in new ways. Why is peer review important? Peer review is important because scientists share their findings with the scientist community by publishing articles to undergo peer review and know if the experiment needs feedback. In this topic, we also saw what is a scientific theory. A scientific theory describes a well-tested explanation for a range of a phenomena. And finally, we saw that the way that science is applied in society can be affected by bias. And what is a bias? A bias is a particular preference or point of view that is personal rather than scientific. It includes personal taste, preference for someone or something, and society's stance or beauty. The last topic of this chapter is studying life. And finally, in this topic, we saw that biology is the study of life. In life, there are living things, and the characteristics of the living things are that they are made up of basic units called cells, are based on a universal genetic code, DNA, obtain and use materials and energy, grow and develop, reproduce, respond to their environment, maintain a stable internal environment, homeostasis, and change over time. Living things are based on a universal genetic code. All organisms store and complex information they need to live, grow, and reproduce in a genetic code written in a molecule called DNA. Living things grow and develop. A particular pattern of growth and development. Living things respond to your environment. Organisms detect and respond to stimuli from their environment. A stimulus is a signal to which an organism responds. Living things reproduce. They produce new similar organisms. They can reproduce in two different ways. In sexual reproduction, that is when cells from two parents unite to form the first cell of a new organism, and asexual reproduction, that is a single organism produces an offspring identical to itself. Living things maintain a stable internal environment. All organisms need to keep their internal environment relatively stable, even when external conditions change dramatically. This condition is called homeostasis. Living things obtain and use material and energy. All organisms must take in materials and energy to grow, develop, and reproduce. The combination of chemical reactions through which an organism builds up or breaks down materials is called metabolism. Living things are made up of cells. Organisms are composed of one or more cells, the smallest units considered fully alive. Taken as a group, living things evolve. Groups of organisms evolve or change over time. Ideas in biology. The first big idea is the cellular basis of life. Living things are made of cells. Information and heredity. Living things are based on a universal genetic code. Matter and energy. Living things obtain and use material and energy. Growth, development, and reproduction. All living things reproduce. Homeostasis. Living things maintain a relatively stable internal environment, a process known as homeostasis. Evolution. Taken as a group, living things evolve structure and function. Each major group of organisms has evolved its own particular body part toolkit, a collection of structures that have evolved in ways that make particular functions possible, and diversity of life. Although life takes an almost unbelievable variety of forms, all living things are fundamentally similar at a molecular level. All forms of life on Earth are connected into a biosphere, which literally means living planet science as a way of knowing. Science is not a list of facts, but a way of knowing.
Thank you for your attention. I hope you have a great day.